Thank you so much for sticking around. True fans. No, honestly, thank you all for sticking around. I trust that we've all had an amazing, transformative experience. Thank you so much to Hannah for giving us an amazing, transformative experience. So we're going to have a very informal kind of discussion Q&A session. You're all welcome to chime in if you've got any questions. We've got one mic, but we will share it like we were taught to do as children. With me, Lulu from before, whose practice is also based in sound and visual art, sculpture. And I'm really excited to talk to these two amazing creators because I feel like there's some similarities between the way that they respond to sound, the world, history, within an artistic practice. So I actually did my research and have a lot of questions, but we're going to make it informal so it won't be question-based. The first thing that I actually wanted to discuss was within that presentation you gave, when you talk about Beyonce, who we love, there's this little snippet that you referenced where she talks about wanting to erase the sounds of the footsteps in the recording.
Actually,
right? Amplify.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't clear in the talk.
You didn't amplify. I wanted to hear more about that because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, so in the Homecoming film, which is considered a film and has won awards as a standalone film, she talks about how the sound person needs to... The problem of retaining the kind of liveness of the event, and how do you do that as a sound as a sound director. So it's like, how do you incorporate the ambient sounds that do totally make, fully make something like that, because each kind of movement of the dancers and the musicians is on the beat, so it creates this kind of other percussion that goes along with the actual percussion that you're hearing, and like all those sounds contribute to taking you there in a really wild way. It's like, if you think about, I don't know, I had the luxury of like going to like a sound design, sitting in on a lecture to do with that with someone who's really like, pro, and does things from like Harry Potter films to like independent films, and like how you have to build up this world of sound in film where it's just, the camera, and you've got to have the footsteps, you've got to have the sound of the wind, you've got to have the cars driving by, how far away are they driving fast, are they driving slow, all that creates an atmosphere. And I think what she's talking about in Homecoming is, those little ambient things that speak of aliveness after the fact,
Aliveness after the fact, I really like that. And the reason that I think I meditated on that is because it really reminds me a lot of your work, Lulu, especially a ripple and an echo, which is, you can elaborate on it, but from how I experience it, it's like a cataloguing of like everyday sounds. Am I correct in referencing it in that way?
Yes, but also, yeah, it's... I just really wanted to... I wanted to add some realness to the sound, but it also, because I don't understand, or because I'm learning programs as I go, and I'm teaching myself how to do everything. I feel like I can, like breathing and like steps, and I like that life in things, and like that, like there's a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of field recording where it doesn't include the footsteps. What happened? You were walking through, man, like, or a woman, like, person, you're walking through the forest and we can't hear you walking. What the hell is that? It's so manufactured.
Can you tell us a little bit about that work?
Oh, sorry. The work was like, also I want to say thank you so much, Hannah, for your talk, and you're so generous, and it was, I feel like, because I think I started my PhD like that year, that very year you gave your talk. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, really taken by your approach and just I guess that within those constraints, the freedom that you gave yourself. And so with that in mind, I was like, maybe I'm gonna do some sculptures, and so I wanted to. I really like Octavia Butler. Oh my God! And she does this beautiful quote that this beautiful part of one of her books in which one of the characters is holding a piece of like a vessel, and they're looking at it, and the person can read the story just by. Have you read this book?
Which one is it? It's not Parable of the Sower, is it?
No, I think it's Kindred.
Kindred. Yeah.
It's towards the end, and she grabs this vessel, and her like extreme empathy is in the narrative, and so she grabs this like thing. I wish I had a thing to hold. The thing, but empty, right? No.
It's a double.
But instead of seeing the liquid, it's like it sees, you see the story, but you perceive it with you perceive it. And you perceive it in the way that the person who's given you the object experiences it. So the person who's been given the object says in the book, so is this so what, how come I can see, why did you give me this story, why is it that I can see this story and I don't see the people who've touched it, the museum people, because it was an artifact from a museum. How come I don't see all the other hands that have handled this like 2,000 year object, like it was made, maybe I think it was like a Persian, I don't know exactly, but it had a really long history. And so this person's looking at it. She said, I didn't want that story. So this is the story that you get, and it was the story of the person who made it. So I wanted to do that because I think about the speakers, but the speakers are like deceptive, The speakers make you think it's about loud, but it's not. It's about the space it creates for me. And I guess it's the thing when I was listening to it, I was like, fuck yeah, like it's a space, that space of like this cyclical space of reception but it's a cultural space. So I wanted to do that, but also I'm learning so many things because I come from like a DJ background, and I don't come from instrumental or equipment based so much, but I'm learning, right? I've got my tricks and so I was like, one of them is the fact that I don't like how often sound art has like amplification stuff all around, and then you have to work out where you're going to hide it, and I don't like that within like sculptural. I don't know, this is my rule, right? So I'm like, I don't want people to be able to see this stuff or cables in a work so I decided to use phones and things that you want to get rid of, but you can still make some use. So that's what that work is about. And the sounds are like layer upon layer of, maybe that was an experiment, I feel. I think it'll get better. Because I look, when you look back at things and you go, oh, that was like it was the embryo, but that was really hard, but then you look back and you're like, oh, I know how I can make that better. Yeah.
It's the definition of progress, really.
Yeah.
It's super interesting that you talk about progress and things being difficult and working on and learning, because before, when we were briefly chatting about the sound systems, you were telling me that, which I find really amazing, that within that culture of like making sound systems and that whole ecology of a culture, there's these two opposing ways of interacting, and that being mentorship and competition. how does that, I just want to hear you talk about how that exists in your work when you've made the sound systems or whatever, or like, are those things that you think about in the act of making? Because they seem really sculptural and performance-based as well as being like, you know, a sound-based thing. As someone who knows nothing, please educate me.
I made the sound system so that I didn't have to engage with the competition side of it, and I didn't want to enter a competition of the sound system world, the reggae world. I didn't want to be a part of that because I knew that I was never going to. That's not. I knew I was an outsider, even though I had spent some time in there. Like I also knew I was an outsider the whole time, the whole way through. Like I was there because I reminded me of reggaeton, and I was like an imposter. Like I was like I'm not here to. I like reggae, yeah, for sure, but and then I was like, where's the women's sound system people here? Where are they? And then I was like, I want to make my fucking own. I'm going to make my own. And then I was like, how do I make that? I don't know. And so then I was like, oh, well, there's no need to compete with anyone because I actually don't know how to do the thing. So then, yeah. And also because I really, I like it. I like doing things my own way, right? And so sometimes that's to my detriment. So I create all these problems. And then I'm like, well, it turns out I'm going to have to do it all on my own. But then I had a community of people who are really supportive and who helped me. But at the same time, they helped me because I wasn't like with people who make sound systems. They helped me answer they answer questions. They helped me with equipment, knowing full well that I wasn't going to be a competitor. But there's now, like within the reggae scene, within all those skills, and within that very kind of environment, and there's now like a sound system being built by women within that environment, which is great. So I feel like I can now, like, I don't have to be that person pushing back. I was like pissed off when I built. I was so angry. No, not angry, but I was just like, why do I have to go and like please those people there, all those men? They don't even shake my hand when they see me. It's like I don't exist. And I don't want to flirt with them. I'm not interested in that look. Like, not the look, but the vibe. Yeah. Or the look, actually, for that matter. But, you know, there's just like, they don't know, you don't know my story. You know, and also like, and then I was like, but then there's like the sound world. I'm like, these people need a shake up. Like, do they even know this shit's going on here? Here, like, maybe other places people did, but like I was like, excuse me, but you know how you really like this sound thing? Like, what about, do you even know? So I was like, I was really happy to be that person who like, who was on the outside of everything, but like trying to make a point. So it feels really good. But I feel like once you make a point, then you have to actually like create the thing that you're trying to make the point about, because otherwise people just see the superficial side of it and they go, oh, you know, those are some big speakers. It's like, but it's not about the speakers. It's not about how loud they may be or what they, it's, or how, or like, it's about the narrative, and the narrative isn't always loud, like, you know? The narrative is so nuanced, and like that was my point with all of this. Has been, it's actually because it's been 3 years, and then before that it was like maybe so I've been doing this speaker thing for like the sound system for, I don't know, like 7 years or something. They take up so much space, but in my studio, like I love them elsewhere taking up space, and they're beautiful and they've tuned and nice and everything now, but yeah, I feel like they've made their point, and now it's smaller now, you know, like when you showed all those things before, all those like like, yeah, the narratives that you create. Yeah, I was like, yep, that's it. It's nice to have the speakers. And actually, when I gave a talk about my practice in Naples at a Soundsystem Conference, I was like, where is the queer sound systems?
London,
I
UK,
know.
boss. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
I'll hook you up with everyone, like, to at least have the conversation with the kind of Smith, don't you've been to a Friary Road party, haven't you? Like, where we have boss sound systems. Okay, so we can't have one of those parties anymore because the last party, the neighbours complained. They called the council. They did a decibel reading, and we went above. And if we make any more sound really loud past 11 p.m., they'll come round and seize $5,000 worth of kit. I'm like, ooh, it's not $5,000 worth of kit, but it's, you know. So, and to put it bluntly, I mean, we live in an area in Peckham. It's great. It's near the Old Kent Road, if anyone knows Peckham. It's a big garden. It's amazing. And we have lots of... There's a house next door to us and it has different neighbours. I'm saying too much. You could know. People could know. This is being documented. This is like... You can beep all this out. But like, you know... It's highly likely that the people that called the police were white. It's highly likely that they felt intimidated by a bunch of brown queers having a good old time. It's highly likely that all that stuff, even though we spoke to them before, it's highly likely that, yeah, what we did was completely too far, even if it was a Saturday night. But at the same time, there is like... It speaks to the past. It speaks to you cannot drum, you cannot sing, you cannot communicate, you cannot make noise. You know, the whole trope of the loud black woman. I mean, like, yeah, I'm loud, but like also like, or you know, lots of people are loud, but that's not the full story. Maybe I'm not that loud. I don't know. No one's ever done a decibel reading on me. I don't know.
We can have a loud off.
Wait, do you want to? Oh, no, don't tempt me. But all that is to say that it's... Well, like, I'm so grateful to be here and, like, to, you know, living out this parallel life on the other side of the world, but also realising right now, I guess, like... Because I think of you often, do you know what I mean? I see you on Facebook and likewise, Atong, like, honestly, like, I think that 3 years ago, it really did something. And I think I'm saying this right now, you know, we need to make the effort to kind of link up these things because what Boss, Evan Ifakoya was the founder of Boss, and it is a collective. So it's not, they don't really like claim that as their project, but it is. But it's so much kind of more than that in that it's a community. It's teaching people how to build and maintain these things. So you don't need to kind of, we don't need to kind of, because I know exactly what you mean in terms of like being excluded from sound as a woman. Don't even get me started. I won't get too specific, but it's a constant thing, and it feels like these things are cemented in a way to exclude people who aren't, you know, the classic template of what that is. And you know, a lot of people say that, you know, volume is power, but like, you know, or to have that opportunity, it's, yeah, I don't know. I digress a bit.
Yeah, there's other, I think there's other registers.
Yeah, totally.
So many. So it's like such a big range to like, I love being loud, don't get me wrong. I'm there, like, yeah. But also, if that's all you're concentrating on when someone's speaking and you're not listening to the whole waveform, like you're really missing out. Like, and that's the thing that, like, like for me, like going to this Soundsystem Conference, it was good because it was like we talked about all these different things, and then there were so many people still on the outside of that, but it was good. There was a whole women's panel, and there was like Kaya sound system, and that was really great. And everyone, it was incredible how subjective women of color were about when they described their sound system. And that was the most beautiful thing. It was like, this is my history and this is my sound system. They never said they had they had a narrative. They had a myth, you know? And I don't know. This is like the thing for me that's like really, that is like also a thing that attracts me to Sun Ra, is the myth. And I was really interested in when you brought up the Nazi, you know, the sort of how they took the aesthetic of the Wagner myth, and you know, I just wanted to know how, when you were speaking, like, no, actually, you actually answered my question. Because if only Wagner had spoken to the thing, to the myth, and exactly, if only Wagner had seen the nuance of race in the mythology, then perhaps, as you said...
Yeah, I mean, just that's the thing about myths. It's like they're not effective and powerful because they're true. They're effective and powerful because they contain like a lesson or a moral or something that begs retelling to remind us of like human conditions. For example, like the Orpheus myth, Hades says, "Don't look back or you'll lose her forever." Of course he's going to look back. It's like, that's very human, like failure. It's like, you know, that's the thing that resonates, the kind of failure, the human. We all know it, like we're all our own worst enemies, and we all kind of, sorry, I'm speaking for everyone, but like, you know, like I can see myself doing stuff and I'm just like like defo human, which I guess is a step up in terms of like the wider histories, but you know, like, yeah, that's why they stick around. And also, like, I was going on about volume, but like, you're so right. Like, I'm thinking of my mate Bradley. I've probably mentioned before. I wish he was here. Good lad, but he got a new set of speakers, or a new thing that I don't know. I think it was a new, something to do with speakers, and it was like the tracks. There was a dub track that I don't remember the title of, and then there was Come Together, the Beatles, because it's like got all that nuance within that bass line that I think it's classic to test speakers with that track, but and also dub. But I'm interested in that. Do you know what I mean? That's the sign of a good speaker, is how well it conveys literally everything. So you've got to get the different registers, and yeah, I wish I knew more about that. And I think being able to understand what that is super important, because just like with everything, if there's a wider variety of people with different stories coming from different places, approaching the way that we amplify, we're going to get like, I think it, you know, or at least like, for example, like the way I think about composition is how it means to put together. So I think about that in terms of like people. Who are the people in this room? Who are the people who are playing? Who's conducting? I'm thinking about the orchestra. Like, how are you putting it together? And I think about Boss, and I think the sound systems were built by Boss, led by Evan, learning and sharing them skills. And when the people come together to dance to the music that's being played by it, who's playing the music, who's dancing to it, it goes out and out, it radiates out and out and out and out. It's like, so if the people are, you know, if queer, femme, you know, other people are building them, then it's going to radiate out. And that's the thing that I think is super exciting about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think, it's so weird because for something that was, you know, for like sound system culture to come as like, it was something that came outside of the parties. that have that wealthy people, plantation owners would have these parties, and then everyone else would have better parties, but they'd have to create their own thing on far away and outdoors and whatnot. And I feel like somehow something got lost there, like, and people are like more bigger, 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 bigger. I feel like that's the thing that I'm sort of I was noticing, like, you gotta make them bigger, bigger, and so you get this, your eyeballs start to like shake. You can feel your liver like crying out for help. It's like a contraction. Like, it's like when you're giving birth, you have these contractions, but it's on the contraction on the outside of you. It's like, we don't need this. Like, what we need. But yeah, so I feel like when we were sitting around talking about, and I started to think about all these different, this is the last I'll talk about subsystems really, but when I was sitting there, I was like, but where did the bit go? Where people talk about, where did the politics of it go? And I think in the UK there's more politics to do with that, maybe not so much here. And then I was like, but the places where I love DJing, or the people who know how to dance to my music, and they don't go to reggae parties. They go elsewhere, and they have and now I'm at this point, right, where I just want someone else to take the speakers away from me, because I'm done. Like, if anyone.
They should be shared, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like the instrument Orphanage, it's like the thought of dormant speakers. Wait,
Yeah.
is there a pun there? Active speakers, passive speakers, dormant speakers. Yeah. But like, they're meant to be activated, like, maybe you should, I don't know, consider thinking about how to get that out into a community, your community, the community, a community based around it. I mean, I'm not kind of being like, because I know how hard it is to like start stuff and maintain it and like commit to that. And also I don't have to, I'm only thinking about, I don't have any dependents, you know what I mean? I got my cat Susan, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not, I respect the differences around like how that may or may not be possible, but like in terms of sharing the the vibrations, like I'm sure there'd be loads of people who would be interested in helping and contributing to the lives of these objects.
Yeah,
sculpture, speaker.
They're dormant. They're ready to be used. They are, and they sound so beautiful. It's just that I feel like they need a new life. They need a makeover, and like they're their own thing now. They played for children. They play for they've had so many beautiful, so many community lives, so many different lives, and if only it's time for somebody else to take them over and like.
Sounds like there should be like a liquid architecture speaker residency situation where different people come and DJ and like, activate them. Just saying.
Are we time conscious? Yeah. We're time conscious. Not in terms of speakers. There's never enough time for speakers. I'm just going to ask you both to comment on one thing really, really quickly that you've both kind of brought up in your work. Just this concept of sound activating memory and sound as a living cultural archive on 5 seconds each.
Wait, sound as
living memory.
Sound as living memory.
And also as cultural archive.
And also as cultural archive. I mean, all right. I can't do 5 seconds. Right. So for me, like, diasporic, like, I'm trying to be quick because diasporic histories is so vast. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, whatever that means. But there is, within all diasporic histories, there's traditions of oral, experiential and oral traditions of passing on and sharing knowledge, a lot of which, due to the facts of repeated and ongoing displacements and ongoing genocides, and I mean that, do you know what I mean? The breaking down of the othered family, obviously here is extremely, potent, traumatic, these kinds of things, this kind of systematic destruction of First Nation peoples, Indigenous peoples, and the loss. For example, like even in Rio de Janeiro, there was the fire in the library and lots of languages were lost because they were documented, but then it was just burned, and it's just like trying to sustain, literally the vibrations, the sounds of those languages is it's like, for example, in Lagos, if you write to your local government in Yoruba, you will get a response back in English. So it's, do you know what I mean? It's systematic. So sometimes it's kind of like, I don't really know how to describe it, but I'm trying to flip it back to an oral histories, as in like people having conversations and these kinds of conversations which are being documented, and how can we have access to these things? Now we have, obviously things are different now in the way that we document, but I feel like there are so many things to do with intergenerational trauma, the DNA, how it flows through you, how sometimes something can happen to you and you know that it's happened to someone in your family and you feel it on a level that you're like, why do I feel this so strongly? And you know that it's ingrained in you. I feel like the same with certain rhythms, with certain like musics where I'll hear, like, I remember the first time I heard Ibo Taylor sing, Come Along, like, and I was like, eh, and I was like, okay, it's from like Ghanaian music does something to me. This might be neither here nor there, but my ancestry DNA test. And also another thing, I've paid £100 to give someone else my DNA. I want them to clone me for my own benefit so I can like be in multiple places at once. But like, that's how fucked it is. Like, they colonize us, then we pay them to tell them where we're from. Yeah. Anyway, to try and get beyond the, not beyond, but to try and dig deeper than, my dad's from Barbados. Okay, it took me a while to figure out that Barbados is a construct. It didn't exist, like, there's a whole thing about that, which I won't go into, gone way over 5 seconds. But there's a reason that Ghanaian music, percussion resonates with me in a way. And that's because I paid £100 for someone to quantify out of the 48% African I am, 14% of that is Ghanaian. So maybe it's that. I don't know.
On that note, like totally, completely. Oh my gosh. Okay, 5 seconds.
Time is a construct.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? There's like, how on earth, there's like, I was looking at this painting and it's like, there's like an archive of paintings from the 1700s. So that's 200 years into colonization of Latin America. And so they've got these paintings in which they made up, the Spaniards made up something like 15 like races, weird ones. Like one of them is called This Doesn't Make Sense. Like literally, no te entiendo. This doesn't make sense. One of them. Like weird. So all these, like there's all these mixtures and everyone's like, I'm this mixture. Well, so they lost a good, there's 2% or 1% of the races on that thing are left in the lexicon. And one, like the biggest one is mestiza. And it's all there. And people refer to themselves in that way. However, that's bullshit. Because how on earth is, like, for example, in El Salvador, how on earth is the national, because fascism was big in Central America, in El Salvador especially, right? There's a massacre, 30,000 indigenous people got killed in the 30s. Big. Whew. If you looked indigenous. So, And then anyone who looked African wasn't allowed in the country. Middle Eastern, maybe, if you looked white enough. So, how on earth is the freaking instrument, national instrument, a freaking marimba? If it's not for the freaking, for the African slaves that came and worked in the mines. How do we have a berimbau, which we called caramba? Don't laugh. I know you watch The Simpsons, but you know, like, how is that a national instrument? If it's, you know, it's an African instrument. I don't feel like I need to do it. I don't have $100, but if I did, I've been tempted to go, you know, like, and get a test. But, you know, putting that little thing aside, like, it's all there. Of course. Yeah, that sounded angry.
It's fine to be.
You're allowed to be angry. Thank you everyone so much for being here to witness and hear all this amazing stuff. Thank you to Lucretia and to Hannah for giving us so much energy. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I suppose.
And thank you to Atong, thank you to Joel and everyone at Liquid Architecture and everyone here for having us, and sorry for putting it past bedtime. Like, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.